The way we pay our taxes, as well as far as the Republican tax plan that is set to be voted on sometime this week.
Yeah, here's some of what the tax reform plan includes, and yes, it is confusing. It proposes cutting the corporate tax rate from 35% currently to 21%, caps state and local deductions here in California and elsewhere to just $10,000, adjusts the cap for the mortgage interest deduction, and it repeals Obamacare's individual mandate. Also, it lowers the top individual tax rate from 37% to 37% from the current 39.6%.
All right, the change will take effect in 2018 if President Trump signs the bill by December 31st. However, taxpayers won't see the full impact until spring 2019 when they file their 2018.
Yeah, it will not affect your taxes this year.
All right, so Congressman Scott Peters was nice enough to stop by before he gets on a plane to go back to Washington. Good morning.
Don't make me go.
You have to.
Yes. Let's talk about this tax plan and what it really is going to mean for Californians.
Well, first of all, let's just say a couple words about how awful this is for the country. I mean, the country's facing slow growth, we're facing inequality, and we're facing a large national debt. This really is a problem for inequality and for national debt because the benefits of this tax plan, and I don't mean to sound jargony, but they really do go to wealthy people. And you're not going to get any benefit out of that from a growth perspective. So every independent analysis of this bill says that it's grow the debt faster than it grows the economy, and we're heading up toward the national debt being as large as our national economy, so which means there won't be investment.
But the problem is like, what does that mean? I mean, people don't, when you hear the national debt, I mean, people are like, whatever. How does it really affect me? How does that affect me?
So we're doing all this spending. Effectively, we're borrowing for these tax cuts without getting a road, without getting a bridge, without getting a job, and I think the direct effect on California is also very difficult because we have higher state and local taxes than other places. Those will be capped. We know that that could affect, the mortgage interest deduction will be capped. We know that could affect housing values in California, and that could affect local revenues from property taxes. So it's going to be very difficult for California.
Tax reform has a history going back to the 80s, the trickle-down economics, and where if you slash the taxes for corporations, that is going to help the economy in the long run. You don't see this happening at all in the long run.
No, there will be some growth, but I think the point is that if you give a wealthy person who's got a big bank account a tax cut, that's not going to have an effect on the economy. That person already has bought what he or she wants to buy, right? They're not out there trying to make choices about whether to buy this thing this year or next year. Give a tax break to a middle-class family who's trying to make ends meet. Maybe they're going to buy those extra school clothes this year. Maybe the person in the small business is going to buy the truck this year instead of replacing it 2 years from now. That has an effect on the economy. The way this is set up with all this benefit to the high-income people, those people already have what they need. They're not going to be spending money to accelerate the economy.
The Tax Policy Center found 3/4 of the households would pay less in their taxes next year. Do you not feel that that'll happen, at least in the short term?
There will be, as you said, not next year, but the year after. I think there will be a small benefit for a number of people. And by the way, it expires in year 8. The corporate taxes do not expire. The corporate tax do not expire. I think what we should do is we recognize, many Democrats, speaking for myself, recognize that we should have a lower tax rate to be competitive for corporations internationally. We should do something about our international tax system. We could do that, we could have done that in a bipartisan way without breaking the bank and without really putting so much debt on the backs of our children. It's going to make it's much harder for us to respond to an emergency with all this national debt, whether it's a financial emergency or a security emergency. Are we going to borrow money from China to help us defend against North Korea? I mean, this is the kind of thing we have to think about for our future. It's not like there won't be an effect from all this debt. Someone's going to pay higher taxes down the road. It's going to be our kids.
So, but what I keep hearing about this when people say, "Oh, it's you're going to see your taxes go up." What about the doubling of the standard deduction? And what about the increase in the child tax credit? And isn't that going to offset in California?
Well, so every independent analysis of the bill says that what you'll get from growth is much less than you'll get in debt. and that's, you know, the Joint Committee on Tax, which is Congress's own, the Wharton School, where Mr. Trump went to school, University of Chicago, Goldman Sachs, Moody's, all say that the benefit of this from an economic standpoint to the country will be minimal, short-term, maybe negative.
Let's talk about the politics of this, because obviously that's what is going into this, all of this. You know, straight down the party line, really. Except last time we checked, Congressman Darrell Issa, a Republican, was going to be voting no on this. So I just want to talk to you logistically about voting on this in the House. How is that, do you see that shaking out, besides straight down party lines? And is a no vote, if indeed Congressman Issa does that, says no, is that going to affect anything? Well, I think Darrell, to his credit, voted the first version. There were 13 no votes. I think to make a difference would have to get up around 24. So we're that's a huge threshold. From that. And, but look, you know, I congratulate Darrell for looking out for his constituents. I think that's good. I used to have conversations with Republicans about the national debt in 2013. They were bipartisan. They expressed concern about leaving this debt with their kids. They are all voting yes on this thing, and that's very disappointing to me. In 1986, which you referenced the last tax bill, they had a unanimous vote out of the Ways and Means Committee, Republicans, Democrats, because they tried to find what the problem was first and then fix the problem. This is creating a lot of problems and not fixing many problems, and I think that's the difficulty of doing it in one party without any hearings. It's a very frustrating process, but it's bad policy.
I know when you first ran for Congress, you were all about bipartisanship and that you were going to go to Washington and hope to see that. Is that, I mean, we're not seeing that. We're seeing the exact opposite. There is never a very rarely bipartisanship there. I still am all about it. I mean, I'm gonna be in some partisan conversations this week, but in January I'm going to get on the plane trying to find answers, and to the extent we found answers, it's in a bipartisan way. I think that's the way it's got to be. But gosh, I mean, it's hard when on health care and on tax policy, when you got a Democrat like me who would like to work. I'm not a part of a partisan army. I really would like to solve problems, and you can't even get in the room. After they complained about the way Obamacare was done, which was way more wide open, many more hearings than this, to double down and make this process on these very important issues so one-sided, it's bad for the country. And I understand I'm in the minority. Probably if we did it in a bipartisan way, I might get 40% of what I wanted. They would get 60%. But let's do it together. I heard the quote repeated yesterday. It's really hard to get tax reform. It's even harder to keep it. A lot of Democrats are saying 2 years from now, whatever it is, when all reverses, that the Democrats will come back and change what's being done now. And again, that's why it should be bipartisan. If you had a bipartisan approach where you said both parties participated in it, and again, we're in the minority, probably would be tilting toward the Republicans, it would have sustainability. But when you tell people you're out, you get no say, of course it's going to come back in the next. That's what happened with the health care bill. Of course the Republicans wanted to fix it. They felt they didn't have a voice. It's even worse this time on this tax bill because there literally were no hearings. I want to talk about the corporate tax rate, because I know the Chamber of Commerce has always endorsed you here in San Diego. You're always a friend of the business community. Isn't that going to be good to reduce the corporate tax rate down to 21%? And I'll tell you, I think it's good. I think the nominal, a lot of companies pay 35%. It makes it difficult for them to compete in the world economy. I think we should have raised it or lowered it to about 25%. That would have been good. But the thing you didn't do was get rid of the loopholes. So right now the average company is only paying, I think, about 18%, because some companies, some industries have deductions that they can drive their tax down. We've rationalized none of that. So we've moved everyone down. I think that will make companies more competitive. I hope that there aren't other incentives to drive them offshore. I would have been willing to work on that, but to do it in a way that was fair, to really make sure that we have the money we need for roads, bridges, national defense, scientific research. We didn't pay any attention to that. The Congress didn't pay any attention to that in this bill. How about how this discourages home ownership? Yeah. Especially in California, where we obviously pay more than most of the country. Where do you see that falling? I mean, is it really going to discourage people from buying new homes or upgrading? Well, I think, you know, we have our own challenges with respect to housing prices throughout California and in San Diego. This makes it tougher for homeowners, there's no doubt about it, because it limits the amount you can deduct in your property taxes. And it could reduce values over time, because, you know, when you go in to buy a house, you know this
thing than your book. It's going to cost you more than it would otherwise have cost you.
Sure.
You know, I want to talk real quick, and I know you don't have any kind of jurisdiction at all over state and local taxes, but as a result of this, I mean, the reality is it's going to pass. I mean, there's a very slim chance that it would not pass.
I'm still getting on the plane, Lisa.
I know, but I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Scott, but I just think, the reality is this looks like it's going to move forward, and we're going to get stuck with this. So now the question is, and I have asked this of our local, you know, our local representatives, is there a way in California to give us a break on those things? Like through state and local taxes? Don't you think that the state of California is kind of just gluttonous with all of this tax money that they're gouging us with?
You're right. We're not part of the state government. I would say, look, it's a high tax state in many ways. Property taxes are probably a little bit less on average, but the income and other taxes a little higher. I would just say the state's cooking along pretty well. The economy's doing very well. We've got a budget surplus. Maybe there's some room to do that, but I don't think that that this federal tax bill is the way to induce that conversation. I think it's just unfortunate that we're being treated so much worse than other states.
Real quick, before I let you go, I want to ask you about the president today with his speech that he's going to give on his new national security strategy. And I know you are really big into, of course, the defense industry here, and you're an advocate, of course, of our military. What would you like to see come out of that speech today?
You know, I would like a strategy. And let me just say, I think that I'm one of the people who thought that the military was underfunded on readiness to some extent.
Well, clearly, look at all those incidents with the ships.
And yeah, I think, and I'm sympathetic to that. But you have to have a good State Department. And if you think about investments in diplomacy as a way to avoid conflict, that is the biggest bang for the buck you can get. And to see what this president has done to diplomacy, and to see how the State Department has been ravaged, it's just really bad. It's just not part of a good strategy. We don't want our strategy all to be about fights where you know, we spend a lot of money on bombs and we lose a lot of lives. We want to be about preventing that. And one thing I would really love to see from this president is an appreciation that if we work together with other countries in an economic way, and I'm disappointed in his trade policies on that, but if we have good diplomacy and we're strategic, we can avoid a lot of those fights, save a lot of lives, and save a lot of money.
Going back on an airplane tomorrow?
No, today.
Today.
Right now, in an hour.
You're not flying Delta,
Can you make it tomorrow?
Yeah, right? I hope you're not having to go through Atlanta. All right.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And have a great Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.